Doing today, this is your boy Mike Fallon. I'm back at it again with Citizen Cinema. Right now I got my guest host, as you guys recognize in the last couple of videos. This is my homie Vaughn. Please introduce yourself.
Hey guys, how's it going? I've been on the show a couple of times. Great to be back.
Alright, so we literally just saw Dunkirk, and Vaughn's been trying to get me to come down here to the Spectrum in Irvine to check it out, because it's the last, and like you said,
it's one of the few real 70mm IMAX screens left in the country.
Alright, yeah, break it down a little bit further for the people.
Yeah, man, Dunkirk was shot, as all Christopher Nolan films are, except for Inception and his few earlier ones. The Dark Knight trilogy was shot this way. Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, and now Dunkirk has been shot with 70mm IMAX cameras. And what happens is when you shoot those cameras, that entire 8-story tall screen fills up with that entire image. And now, Mike, I got to do a bit of the interviewing here. Got to ask you for all your views, because I've been hyping it up. We made that promo video. I got to ask you, what is your takeaway? What'd you think? Did the hype live up to all the IMAX experience on 70mm, or what? Tell them what you thought, Mike.
Getting to know how Nolan messes with his editing. Yes. Now the thing you guys gotta be braced for, his editing goes at intervals. Okay, so that the ratio will switch up to you in intervals, but it's only to help with the storytelling. Yeah. Not from the lack of editing, but for the purposeful intent of editing.
They always choose that on purpose. He and his editor Lee Smith go through it and say, when do we jump to this format? And the format that he usually jumps to is IMAX from 70mm to 35.
Yes. So again, we're gonna get to some spoilers at this point. You're going to want to click off the video, watch Dunkirk, and come back, because you want to hear what Vaughn has to say and what I have to say.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so quick spoilers. So what were your thoughts on the film overall?
I'm going to give a shout out to Jeremy Jahns here, because I'm going to say the same thing he did. And this is through a personal opinion. This is not even because of his opinion. I just agreed with it. The fact that I don't think this is Nolan's strongest film. I really don't. And by all means, it's not his worst either. I just feel like it's not where his true potential is. I just feel like this was just a personal story that he wanted to tell about, because he's British, you know, all of the British people know about that story of Dunkirk, and he's like, no one's ever put it on film this way before. I want to do that. I want to be the first one to make an IMAX film version of this. And he did, and believe me, through the visuals and the score and the cutting, for me as an editor, you know, all of it, it worked. I just think because you don't spend enough time with the characters, I don't think you care about the characters enough that I wanted to, because yes, the situation is horrible. Yes, they have to get rescued. Yes, they're on a time loop to get out of there. But because you don't care about these characters, I didn't feel the peril that I wanted to feel. And yes, some of you in the comments are going to be saying, like, you didn't feel the peril of Dunkirk. You didn't feel like what they were trying to do is, you know, was emotional and time-consuming. I'm like, no, all of that. Granted, I agree with all of that stuff about how, in real life, how that must have been a nightmare. But in a movie, it's a movie, and you have to relate to the audience, and the way he did it didn't relate to me. It could relate to other people. That's just my personal opinion. I felt like I didn't get the peril and emotion and just the thrill ride of what it means to be in that nightmarish situation. The performances were all fell out great. Nolan casts perfectly again.
Yes.
You know, we got Harry Styles in this, we got Tom Hardy returning, and we got Mark Rylance, who did a great job, as you've seen in the Bridge of Spies with Spielberg, and he was also in the Big Friendly Giant with Spielberg's movie as well. He did a great job. I thought everybody in this movie did a great job. I just think it was the way they constructed the story, where narratively he felt like he didn't really need to spend time with these characters. It's more about the situation. And I understand where that was coming from, but I think you still need to care about these characters. Like you were saying off camera, if we had more of a prologue, if we had gotten to know about these characters and their arc, like, for example, we're going to talk about the main character. I keep forgetting his name. We'll put it in the comment section. We'll put it in the description box. Like the main boy, our main guy, who is trying to get home, and they're rescuing him. They're being all rescued, but like the main guy they focus on, him and Harry Styles, right? If you had sort of a narrative, you know, struggle that he has to go through, like he has a loved one he has to get back to, or he has a kid on the way, and he needs to get back home to experience that, then I would have gravitated more toward these characters. But there was nothing besides them getting home that I really personally identified with. And I know a lot of you are going to say, that's enough. That's enough to be in that nightmarish situation and go home. Absolutely. But in a movie, you still have to make it relatable. And I didn't relate with these characters. And that's okay, because I said off camera to you as well, Nolan does so much and throws so much at you with his ambitious filmmaking that you forgive all the little gripes that you might have with this thing, because the movie's ambitious on every level.
Yes. For me, it's the same thing. I love like like what they did show, I loved exactly what they were trying to portray. But like we were talking about earlier off camera, I feel like when it comes to the origin, I think that's more important because we need an anchor. Now the anchor is what's most important when it comes to filmmaking. If there's no anchor to the characters, to why they're in that peril or why that struggle is what it is, then there's really no point in showing us what's happening. So that was my gripe with it. I just felt that we needed more of a tether. Now, some of my favorite performances, the standouts to me, like we said, the main character, I love how he was trying to use the bathroom the whole time. Yeah. It should have went from Dunkirk, aka you can't use the bathroom. So
hey, when a man gotta go, a man's gotta go, bro.
I know, man, but you trying to go over there in the alleyway. They took out 6 of his homies, got to the beach, was trying to go again, and then he had to help bury a dead body. I'm not trying to make fun of the situation of what they went through in real life. I'm just saying,
that's the way it looked on screen.
That's the way it looked on screen. Like that's why I was saying we need more of a tether to make it more impactful, because we don't know what he was going through in that group before they got shot down.
And that's what I'm saying. I think if we had gotten to know what he was outside this war, you would care as to why he wanted to leave.
Exactly.
Now let me ask you this. We talked about the IMAX format before, but obviously you're here because you wanted to experience that for the first time. You know, when it jumps to the full 70mm IMAX screen on that 8-story tall screen, it gets me so excited, guys, because I'm going to say it again, that's what got me into film editing, man. IMAX, I've been coming here since a young kid. But all that aside, what shots jump out at you to be like, yes, the IMAX format really worked on that? I'm like, whoa, and that blew me away.
Okay, for me personally, guys, the scenes that stood out to me definitely had me when they were drowning, and towards the end, Harry Styles' group and everybody. Tom Hardy, when he did his aerial fights, and then when he burnt the airplane, that got to me when the father and the kids started going towards the fallen air pilot. That was Tom Hardy's friend. Right. When that was like full frame and you got to see the aerial, because when you hear an IMAX, the sound is so surround, so that it sounds like he's coming by you. Actually,
it's the best surround sound format besides Dolby Atmos that you're ever going to get. So now that you finally come here, and we talked about this in a bit of the beginning of the review, but you know, I want to talk about specific IMAX shots. You know, when it jumps from 35 to that full frame, what were the shots in 70mm IMAX capture that you're like, yes, that worked perfectly, Nolan got it across, and I actually understood and felt the scale of that thing?
Okay, the shots that got me most definitely off bat was Tom Hardy, right when he got captured, because you could just feel it. Like, you didn't have to see the Nazis or the uniforms. It's just their pure presence as they came on IMAX. That when his friend got shot down and got rescued by the father and son, when they had the cowarding scarecrow in the boat, you know what I'm talking about? That's the cat from Dark Knight.
He was great in the movie. And I think, that's the thing I want to also bring up is with him, I think my favorite scene in the movie, besides the dog fights in the air, has to be the scene where, you know, spoilers obviously, is when the George dies, the kid. He turns blind because he hit his head on the pole and then he died. But the thing I want to mention, my favorite scene in the movie, is when he asks him, is the kid all right? Like at the end, and he's like, yeah, he's all right, because he understood what this dude's been through and he don't want to give him any more grief, and it was obviously an accident, and you know, everyone's been through a lot, and I thought that was touching. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just felt like I wish they should show a little bit more repercussions for it.
Fight, like you wanted them to fight it out.
I just wanted at least him to get socked out one time for killing a kid. You know what I mean?
What did you think about the Hans Zimmer score?
I loved it. My favorite aspect of this film was towards the end when they're going to the train. Besides the blind man trying to encourage them, I loved how throughout that end sequence, all you do is hear the clock.
For those who don't know,
break it down.
Hans Zimmer, like one of my favorite, if not my favorite composer under John Williams, used Christopher Nolan's ticking of Christopher Nolan's watch, and he recorded that, implemented it into a synthesizer, and put it into his program, and used that for beat by beat. So every time you hear during the score of this thing, like that's the Chris Nolan's watch, man, and you're hearing that on that scale, and everybody thinks it's an instrument, but no, it's a watch that becomes the instrument in the score. Because why? Because it's a metaphorical thing. They want to get out of there. It's all about time, and what a better way to do it than an actual ticking clock.
That's true. And again, you guys, so, you know, this basically wraps up everything we felt about it. The visuals are great. Barely any CGI because there's a lot of stunt planes used. So most of what you saw was real, except for, you know, some of the explosions and, you know, some of the people getting put on fire and whatnot. But again, so this is Mike with Vaughn, and this is our spoiler review for Dunkirk.
Yeah, my final thing to say about it, guys, is like, see it in IMAX. We cannot stress this enough. See it on a real 70mm IMAX screen. We are here at Irvine Spectrum 21 in IMAX. It's one of the very few real IMAX screens in the country left. And if this is not your kind of film, definitely go see it because of Nolan. If you're a fan of Nolan, and if you're not really a fan of war films, still go see it, because as I said, even if you don't like the material, it's a very ambitious movie, and I feel like you're going to have a great time watching this at least once. You did for sure.
Yes, most definitely. And again, you guys, I'm going to put where you can find Vaughn and his stuff, but again, just tell me your panhandle, bro.
Yeah, it's at I'm the Film Editor on Twitter. You can see all the stuff I do here. So all the stuff that you've been hearing about IMAX and all that stuff, it's right here. It's home, you know, up in the projection room. You know, that's where I do all my stuff. Here are all the updates about new videos with me and Mike coming out, all the events that we go to. Yeah, just follow me at I'm the Film Editor on Twitter.
And you already know where to find me, you guys. You take care. Thank you for watching Cinema, and have a good night.